What can be done in the Middle East to, at the very least, stop it from being a hot point every 10 seconds? That and more. We welcome an Associate Professor of Middle Eastern Studies at Florida Atlantic University, Project Manager of the U.S. State Department Iraqi Research and Documentation Project, and author of a forthcoming book on Salafism. Dr. Rabil joins us today. Dr. Rabil, thank
you, Ed, for having me. I am a full professor now, and I was formerly the project director.
Okay, see, but that's what happens. It was in there. We got it in there. So former's good, full professor.
Exactly.
We get it all right.
Thank you
very much. Well, see, we have the guest needs to tell us these things. I want to get to Salafism in a moment because this is something that many people have not heard before.
Yes.
But let me just get your. We laughed a little bit here in the break before we came out, where I said, we want to get to the point where, as Americans, we want to ask ourselves, how can we be so stupid so many times over and over again to make these same mistakes?
Yes, because we are somehow look at the bright side of things always in the Middle East. And when you go to the Middle East, you should be very careful at what you look at. You have to look soberly and scrutinize a lot of things before you come up, before you forge an opinion about where you are in the Middle East.
Is it simply a matter of saying that we are dealing with generational, centuries-old groups that have been there? They have been fighting these wars forever. And our last guest, Dr. London, I asked her, we had a point where if anybody says democracy and nation building, we should think they're delusional. It simply is not possible with these groups. Is that fair?
Well, I wouldn't say it's not possible. I would say it's going to take a very long term. I think the Middle East is going through phases, and those are important phases in their modern history. And the sad part is you don't have rulers who are really enlightened ruler and work in a more in tune with their population. And this is part of the problem, So it's going through a long problem. It's in the long phase to become a democratic place there.
It seems as if, though, what you're just saying is true, but we've been dealing with this for decades.
Yes, correct.
People are asking, why hasn't it evened out? Why hasn't it changed?
Well, it's a combination of factors. Let me take you back to the early 20th century when Arab nationalism emerged. When Arab nationalism emerged, really it was imbued by the universal idea of the French, British, and the Americans. Let's not forget, the United States established, for example, the first university overseas in Lebanon, the Syrian Protestant College, which became the American University of Beirut. But then what did you have? Then you had the Ba'ath Party, the Syrian Social Nationalist Party. This nationalist party now, they shedded the universal values that we have, and they moved toward Leninist values. Lenin value, mainly one concept is that the concept of the Vanguard Party. What the concept of the Vanguard Party? Mainly it was now the Ba'ath Party who was going to lead society in its transformation to a better society. So here what do you have now? The creation of a totalitarian regimes in Syria and Iraq. And this is mainly part of the consequence that we are seeing in the Middle East, in that it was ruled by totalitarian regime, by a party that very much disintegrated the values that at one time the British, the French, and Americans tried to implant in the Middle East.
Is it fair to say, though, that some of these groups, it's transformational with them? Because we talk about one group, then they change to this, then they change to this. It's almost, here in America, we like to say, the flavor of the month, really. Whatever seems to work is what they're going to change to, and nobody's consistent in any of these groups.
Yes, I would say, broadly speaking, yes. I spoke about Arab nationalism, then I spoke about Baasism. Then you have Islamism now, Islamism or political Islam in its variant forms, including now Salafism. Mainly the ideology that is misconceived here in the West and especially in the United States.
I want to go back to what Tony Blair said here at the beginning, because it's very interesting. He says if the West had not taken out Saddam Hussein, the crisis would be even worse today. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Well, it's a speculative now. If you want to look, you know, it's a speculative question. What I think that Saddam Hussein and Hafiz al-Assad, the late president of Syria, what did they do is that they did not forge a national identity. They did not. So mainly you had Iraq and Saddam Hussein. He very much persecuted the Shia and persecuted the Kurds. And same like him, Hafiz al-Assad, he used with an iron fist, my way or the highway. So really, when we went there, we tried to build a new state. We tried to bring them together. And then you had problems and mistakes piling up on mistakes. And this is what we end up to. What we end up now is that the Salafists are going in and saying, listen, we are the solution, we are the true Muslims, and we are going back to build or recreate the glory of Islam by building an Islamic caliphate. And this is what we are facing. See, and it's terrible.
You mentioned the word Salafist and Salafism. And, and I catch that because, and I've said this many times here on the show in the last week or so, America didn't know what ISIS was until just recently when it was explained to us, the Syrians getting involved, the state they want to create. It's become a new group now. Salafism is a national security threat for Iran and for the Middle East as well. I know that you focus on that. Who are these people?
All right, Salafism. Let me go back and explain to you in a concise but broad way. Salafism comes from the Arabic root, root word salaf. Salaf means predecessor. Which predecessor? Mainly the Muslim look at the generation of Prophet Muhammad, and especially the generation of the first four rightly guided caliph. Mainly a period of time from 632 to 661. This constitutes for them the golden age of Islam. Now you have more Salaf, but this is the golden age of Islam. So all Salafists, they would like to create a society modeled after the one that existed during the golden age of Islam. So here, this is what we are dealing with. The problem with Salafists and the disagreement among Salafists throughout the Muslim world is over how to bring about that Salaf utopian Islamic society. Salafi jihadi, like now ISIS, they believe that we should bring it about through violence. You have Salafi who are Haraki, mainly Islamic activists. They say, no, we should be involved in politics. And you have the Salafi, for example, in Saudi Arabia who support the Saudi state and Saudi monarchy. They said, no, we should focus on education. So here you have now, under Salafism, different groups, and they have their own vision about how to recreate a society.
Another group. Here we have another group that is involved, and that I think is what the American people constantly look at, and the world looks at.
It's confusing to me.
You're an educated man, and I guarantee you that there's educated people sitting here going, I still can't figure out where all these guys are. So if we take Salafism then, as you have explained it here, how much of a threat is it right now in that region as we take what ISIS is doing in the rest?
Salafi jihadi are, or they pose, imminent threat to the United States. We are their enemy. Imminent threat, wherever they are. We are their enemies. We are their enemies. So ISIS in Iraq, Jabhat al-Nusra in Syria, or Salafist Jaish al-Islam at one time in Gaza, or Ansar al-Sharia in Libya, they are our enemies.
Do they have the money and the wherewithal, though, when you talk about being an imminent threat to the United States, to carry out actions that would affect us here on American soil?
Correct. Well, if they have the resources and the plans, they will carry it out, yes. But now they are going to mainly establish themselves. And here what I mean by establishing themselves, to entrench themselves, like ISIS now. ISIS now is focusing on mainly entrenching itself, not only in Iraq, in Syria, and I worry about Jordan. It's worry about Jordan because you have had now this happening for quite some time. And the tribes, sadly so, they have been politicized by the Salafists and they are supporting them. So mainly now their first phase is to do what? To create an area of operation. Once this has been established, this is when the threat becomes more immediate to us.
Okay, only have about 30 seconds left, so America's going to want to know this now. The Salafists and ISIS.
Yes.
Is there a possibility that if they are properly funded, that they could indeed launch attacks against Americans on United States soil?
Yes, yes. Look at Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda was able to do it, so why we say they were not going to try to do it? I'm not saying they will be able to do it, but of course they will try to do it.
They will try, but monetarily and with some of their resources right now, they may not be.
Resources now.
They may not be at that, but they're getting there.
Well, they have money now. ISIS has money and has a lot of equipment that was left over by the Iraqi army. So we have to be very careful.
Dr. Robert Rabil, thank you so much
It's
for
my
coming.
pleasure.
We're gonna do
It's
this
my
again
pleasure.
because I think you have just opened the eyes to a lot of people that once again we have problems here and we have groups out there that you may not have heard of before, but you will hear about it here. Tell us what you think. Let us hear what you think about these different factions around the world. Do it via Twitter, via email, via Facebook, and then we will talk about it here. Because on the Newsmax Network, on Midpoint, every day we question everything.